Suzanne a little bit because, and you know, she would have been here if she could. If there was any way, if you know her, she would have been here. And we've been very good friends for a number of years. And depending on who's driving, if she's driving, it takes 20 minutes to get to my house. And if I'm driving, it takes me 10 minutes to get to her house. So we're pretty close. We are lucky to live near each other in the piney woods of East Texas. And we first met in 2006 when we were both selected by the American Cancer Society's Cancer Action Network to go to Washington, D.C. and represent our congressional district, pounding the pavement in the halls of Congress, trying to get money for cancer research. Actually, we were trying to keep them from cutting funds from cancer research on a lot of those trips. But while our cancer journeys are quite different and our stories are quite different, we both are patient advocates, and I have been for a long time as well. And I just have to tell y'all, I will forever be thankful to Surtex for those little magic beads that she always talks about, because I can't imagine not having had Suzanne in my life. She changed my life. And so thank you, Surtex, for those little magic beads that she always talks about. I wouldn't be exaggerating to say that I bet there are hundreds of people that are alive today because of Suzanne's efforts. Literally. She changes lives. She puts people together. She gets information out there that needs to be out there. She's just an amazing advocate. When I finally went to bed about 1:30 this morning, trying to get ready to fly out here this morning, you know how when you lay down and all of a sudden you have, oh yeah, I need to do this. I need to think. I sent myself a text at 1:30 in the morning and it said, go to the office and get that thing off the wall about Suzanne. So I did, and I'm going to read it to you. And it's in a place of prominence in my office. It's right next to my law degree. So it's not as fancy as my law degree, but it's a great story. And it's called My Hope, Big Moment. And I was asked by the American Cancer Society to tell a story that would convey hope. So here's the story. A dear friend of mine is a 14-plus year stage 4 cancer survivor who is a constant source of hope to me and countless others with cancer. When she learned about an elderly widower in her hometown who had lost his daughter to breast cancer and was now fighting his own cancer battle without any family, she struck up a friendship with him. She was with him when he passed away and was surprised when the hospice nurse gave her a box that Leon wanted her to have. The box contained a note from Leon saying he had written a letter for each and every time that Suzanne had called, emailed, visited, or brought him food. And he ended the note with, "Never give up your spirit of hope. It lights the path for many." And the box contained 428 letters. That's who Suzanne Lindley is. She brings hope. We've spent a lot of time talking about the importance. We bounce ideas off of each other and have for many years. And she's been real interested in multidisciplinary approach to medicine and sees the importance of it in treating cancer patients. And that's what kind of led to me being able to be here tonight to share a little bit of my story. And in a non-oncology example I can give you real quick, my husband had knee replacement surgery last week, and he has been to the ER 4 times. He's had, they've tried to admit him. He's had all sorts of complications. He'll go to one ER and they'll say, "Oh, you've got a blood clot." He'll go to another one, they say, "Oh, you've got cellulitis." The next one says, "You've got an infection, you're gonna have to be on," it's just, but they're not the expert in that area. He needed to see the surgeon who did the knee surgery, but who was gone and he couldn't see him. You need to hook up with whoever it is that can help you on your journey. So I wanted to, also before I share my story, I wanted to recognize Brett Davis, who is here from Myriad, because Myriad's support has allowed my participation tonight, and we appreciate you being here. And I'd like to start off with a little hypothetical. What if I told you that the captain of the Isabella, I think his name's Nate, he just received a weather report that indicates we're going to have a bad storm while we're out here. And we have as high as an 87% chance of sinking if we don't do something drastic, if we don't change directions. Now, before everyone starts worrying, this is a hypothetical.
Thank you for clarifying.
It is. I did see those clouds on the way in here, and I was kind of nervous with that. But what if the captain could reroute us on what might be a very difficult trip, but one that might just save our lives? What would you want to do? Would you want to tempt fate with such a high risk of sinking, or would you want to even know about it, about the possibility? Well, 22 years ago tomorrow, I was diagnosed with 2 different breast cancers, 2 different types of invasive breast cancer, 2 different tumors with metastasis to my lymph nodes. And unfortunately, I was not shocked with that diagnosis because I came from a family with a ton of cancer. In fact, my mother was battling cancer at the time, and her brother had prostate cancer. Her dad had prostate cancer. Her grandmother had pancreatic cancer. My sister, who was 32 years old, had breast cancer. So there was something up. And I recognized that, but I wasn't too worried about it. Didn't really know how important that information could be. So under the care of an excellent oncologist, I was able to beat both breast cancers after a lumpectomy, numerous rounds of chemo, including the Red Devil, and 30 rounds of radiation. And it's amazing how easy it is to say that all in one sentence, but most of you know, it sounds like it's easy. It wasn't. Treatment is not, it can't be reduced to one sentence. But I'm thankful that I did make it through that first diagnosis. But because of my extensive family history with cancer, my oncologist from day one tried to get me to do genetic testing, to agree to it. And he kept saying, you need germline genetic testing. We need to test you. We need your test. Every time I'd see him, just about. And by the time I was no evidence of disease, he was like, every time he would say it, when I'd go for an annual visit, I'm like, but I'm fine. I'm cancer-free. Why do I need to worry about it? And I would tell him I'd think about it, but I didn't. It was the furthest thing from my mind. And then about 2 months before my mother died from cancer, I agreed to the testing. And when I had the testing, I learned I had a BRCA1 mutation, which with that, I learned I had an 87% chance of having breast cancer again in my lifetime. I'd only had a lumpectomy, so I still had breast tissue. And I had an up to 63% chance of having ovarian cancer. Now let's go back to the hypothetical. What did I say? Okay, an 87% chance of this yacht sinking, but we might be able to avoid it if we took another route. Well, now that I knew that I had that 87% chance, I wanted to take another route. And then with the knowing about the 63% chance of ovarian cancer, I wanted to take that route too and get rid of that. Some of you may know ovarian cancer is often called a silent killer because there's no test for it. Usually you're manifesting symptoms and in an advanced stage before you're diagnosed. So you don't want to get it. So I decided that I would have risk-reducing surgeries. You can't say preventive, but it's risk-reducing. So I had to find someone. I was self-employed. I needed to find someone surgeons that would work together. You won't like to hear this, but I surgeon shopped because I couldn't take off work 3 different times for major surgeries and have major recovery time. So we found 3 surgeons that were willing to work together, and they piggybacked my surgeries. Over 10 hours, I had double mastectomy, reconstruction, hysterectomy, bilateral salpingo oophorectomy, and just for fun, I added a tummy tuck with that. I don't usually tell people that. Oops. My husband was so mad as he was out there in that waiting room, and he's like, "You're still not through? Well, did you not know she?" So, one surgeon after another, after 10 hours, home free, except no, they found ovarian cancer. I had ovarian cancer. So genetic testing literally saved my life. If I had not finally, at that point, gone and had the genetic testing and then immediately had the surgery, I would not be here today. There's not any doubt in my mind. It was so close to spreading, like 0.00025 millimeters from the peritoneum, something, I don't know all that stuff, but it was not good. So I truly credit genetic testing for saving my life. So at that point then, I'd long been a patient advocate working in many different areas, but I kind of changed gears. I became passionate about genetic testing and the importance of it. So I decided it was time to pay it forward, and I started my foundation called My Faulty Gene, which Suzanne, of course, helped me along the way, and she encouraged me to do it. And then we were talking one day. I said, "Well, what do I call it? I don't know what do you call something about your faulty old gene?" She said, "Well, that's it, My Faulty Gene." Thank you, Suzanne. So it's kind of catchy, but yeah, I founded it several years ago, and to give you an idea of what we do, we help patients who are underserved. If they don't have insurance or they are underinsured, they need help with copay. We want to make sure that no one is being overlooked or cannot get it because of money. And there are times when you've got someone that their doctor won't refer them for the treatment, for the testing, for whatever reason. A lot of times they just are not comfortable with doing that. They don't think it's necessary, and they don't do it. On our website, one of the patient stories that we shared is a story of a triple certified physician who for a number of years was facing lumpectomy after lumpectomy because she kept having breast lumps in her breast. And her insurance company, she couldn't convince them to pay for her genetic testing. It was crazy. But they finally just agreed to do it after she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she had a PALB2 mutation and an ATM mutation. And then she developed lymphoma, lymphedema, which has affected her practice of medicine. So unnecessary. Those are the people we want to help. We also help people, say someone is on Medicare. Medicare doesn't care about the older people getting genetic testing. What difference does that make? You're not going to be here much longer. They don't say it in those words, but there's a real issue there. But that person has children or grandchildren that might, if they determine there's a genetic predisposition to cancer, isn't it fair to let them know? It is, in my opinion. So just give you an idea of what we do, over the last 8 months, we have funded 108 genetic testing and genetic counseling sessions. And from the 108 tests that we provided, 48 pathogenic mutations have been identified. So it's important. Genetic testing is important. In my own family, since my faulty gene was identified, 7 members of my family have had the same mutation identified. One of those two of those are my sons. One of them has little girls. The risk that the men have for breast cancer is not as high. It's a much lower risk, but it's still a risk. But they're at risk for prostate cancer, the way I lost my granddad. So it's very important, and that men be tested too, because they have daughters. My brother tested positive for the same mutation, and his doctors do routine screening and surveillance to make sure that he is not developing prostate cancer or breast cancer. Then his daughter also tested positive. She was 25 last year and learned that she had the BRCA1 mutation, and she opted for a double mastectomy and reconstruction. She's an oncology nurse at MD Anderson, and she understands the importance of this information. And once her family is complete, she will be having, getting rid of the other issues that I've already taken care of. But knowledge is a powerful thing. And I know that tonight the primary discussion, I'm the only off branch here, but the primary discussion is liver tumors. And we've talked about Suzanne and we've talked about others. And Suzanne McPeak and Christine Slagle are going to be sharing their stories in a minute, and about how their colorectal cancer metastasized to their livers, as did Suzanne's. But what do they all have in common? Primary colorectal cancer. And did you know that colorectal cancers are often hereditary? So if you're someone here who has had colorectal cancer and you've never had genetic testing, it's something that you should consider. 1 in 279 people have Lynch syndrome. And Lynch syndrome, and that's not 1 in 279 people diagnosed with colon cancer. That's 279 people walking down the street. 1 in 279 of those folks have Lynch syndrome, which has a very high colorectal cancer rate, and uterine cancer and others. But I don't want you to think that we believe that all cancers are hereditary. There's only about 10%, 8 to 10% actually, of cancers are due to a genetic mutation, a faulty gene. And I don't know your stories, so I don't know which ones of you have or currently or have had cancer or what type of cancer it is. But you all have families. Think of your families. Do you have a history, a family history of cancer? If you do, this is something that really should be considered, is genetic testing. And Mayo Clinic recently participated in a study that concluded that they thought that all patients with cancer diagnosis should have genetic testing. And then there was, of the patients included in that study, pathogenic mutations were found in 1 in 8 patients, but 48% of those would not have been detected using standard guidelines. So that's important to know. And then I've included in the little carrier thing that I gave you, an article that just came out a couple of weeks ago it's entitled, "All Colorectal Cancer Patients Require Germline Testing at Diagnosis and Somatic Testing at Advanced Disease Diagnosis." Okay, so read that story. There's a story of 2 women who had Lynch syndrome that was discovered through genetic testing. Let's read their stories. It's very interesting. And just so you'll know, somatic screening is also biomarker testing. It's when they're testing, instead of a blood or a saliva test, they're testing the tumor itself. So that's what they're talking about there. If any of you are interested in learning more about genetic testing, want to talk to me about it, if it's something that you need help with to get, let me know and we would be happy to help you. I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here. I know this is not a normal thing, but I appreciate the opportunity to come and share because I do think it's important. And I always end every time I speak anywhere with the same question. Do you have a faulty gene?
Thank you.